Mark Meirowitz. He's a professor of constitutional law at the State University of New York. Mark, welcome to the News Hour. Just talk to us about the significance of Turkey's involvement in this prisoner swap.
Well, no, so Turkey was quite pivotal in helping to make this possible. This is where everything took place in Ankara, and that was fantastic. And I think it really boosted Turkey's standing with the United States. But the swap itself, as you've described, is some extraordinary exchange and a deal here which was undertaken. And today the Wall Street Journal had a lengthy article about this, particularly the efforts of Evan Gershkovich is the reporter of the Wall Street Journal, his mother, who was kind of everywhere she went, she saw Biden, she saw Olaf Scholz, whoever she saw, she said, please help my son to get out. And eventually that was kind of mom's intervention also. So there are a lot of factors here, particularly the many countries involved, and of course Turkey as well.
Mark, you're speaking to us from the US. How does this prisoner swap impact the campaign? How does it impact Kamala Harris or Donald Trump's campaign?
It definitely does. Actually, you have Biden and Harris there at the airport greeting the people who've been released from Russia. That's tremendous. Biden, was quite, I think, very presidential in answering questions about it, how it was done, his efforts to do it. But at the same time, Trump was very much against it. He said, I'm against this. Why didn't he get this done before? And by the way, he was opposed to the fact that when Brittany Griner, the basketball player who was released in a previous swap, he says, Trump, why didn't you release the rest of the hostages? But the Wall Street Journal article really illuminates what went on here. What went on here is originally the swap was supposed to involve Navalny as well. If you remember, Navalny died in prison, in the Russian prison, the Russian dissident. And when that happened, that sort of interrupted the process of how to get this done. It was an extraordinary effort of unbelievable complexity. And I think a lot of kudos and compliments to the many people involved. But the bottom line of it is, and the question that was asked to Biden is, if you do these swaps, and I think also Trump mentioned this, if you do these swaps, you're just encouraging these countries like Russia and others to take hostages, to take prisoners, and then swap them for people like this Krasikov, who you spoke about in your report, who actually assassinated a Chechen dissident in a park in Berlin. I mean, this is the kind of thing that's going on today that's very problematic.
If I may interrupt, Mark, that was also the point made by Amnesty International. They said, quote, it's a step towards expanding impunity because you're exchanging people who only use their freedom of expression for other criminals. That's what they said in a statement. So there are still other Americans being held abroad. What happens to them? What are their prospects?
Well, I mean, Biden was asked about this. By the way, there was a hearing a few weeks ago in the Congress where they had a lot of Americans beside those remaining in Russia, and of course, many prisoners in prison, wrongly imprisoned in Russia. But there was a hearing, and you found out there were families of people. There's somebody held in Afghanistan by the Taliban. There are people being held, Americans in particular, all around the world. And the question is, how do we get those people out and free? And that is going to be very difficult. And I think it's particularly difficult right now because we have, as you just described, a very fraught Middle East. We have a war in Ukraine. We have a presidential election, a lot of big moving parts that make this type of thing very, very hard to implement. And so I think the world we're lucky that we had this exchange. It's a blessing to world peace to get these people out. But obviously, as you point out, and as Amnesty International points out, we need to do a lot more to make sure that people wrongly detained are released around the world. In particular, in the case of America, those Americans who really, who were detained, like Gershkovich, who essentially is a reporter. And interestingly enough, the last thing he did when he wrote his letter, he wrote in the letter about, I'd like to interview Vladimir Putin for the Wall Street Journal. I mean, isn't that incredible? I mean, the guy's been a prisoner in Russia, and his last wish before he's released is to have an interview with Putin. So, you know, the world is just topsy-turvy. That's all I have to say.
That's a good word to end on, topsy-turvy. Mark, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to speak to you here on TRT World. Mark Meirowitz, thank you. Wow.